This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 132 rooms, 157 suspects, one dead body, one wildly eccentric detective, one disastrous state dinner. The Residence is a screwball whodunit series set among the eclectic staff of the world's most famous mansion, the White House, from Shondaland, with an all-star cast, including Uzo Aduba as Rye Detective Cordelia Cup. Watch The Residence, now, only on Netflix.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Welcome back to Murder in the Black. It is your host, Steph.
And I'm MD.
Let's go ahead and get into our true crime case for the day.
So grab your coffee if it's the morning, your lemonade if it's the afternoon, and your wine if it's the evening. But either way, let's get into it.
Our case today is entitled Depraved Desire, the Samantha Fleming case. Shout out to DeWitt. Our loyal listener sent this in as a case suggestion. Samantha was born near Indianapolis in 1991. Her parents divorced when she was a year old, and she was raised by her mother alongside her sister. As a teenager, Samantha exhibited a rebellious streak, leading to her leaving the house at a pretty young age. It was the age of 19. During this period, she became pregnant. However, the child's father was not in the picture, leaving her a single mother facing significant challenges. Recognizing her limitations at the time, she made the difficult decision to sign guardianship of her child over to her mother, ensuring the child would have a stable and supportive environment. And I have to say, I think that's actually commendable to understand I don't have the resources to provide for my child in the way that I know they should be nurtured. And so I'm going to give that over to my mother. I think that's very commendable for her to do. For the next 2 years, Samantha lived a transient lifestyle, searching for stability and a sense of belonging. Eventually, she connected with Stephen through a dating website. The two began a relationship, and Samantha felt she had finally found her true love. However, the relationship was turbulent, stable, and was marked by frequent breakups and reconciliations. During one of these separations, Samantha became pregnant with another man's child. Despite the complication, when she and Stephen reunited, they were committed to raising the child together. In 2013, a few months after her son was born, the relationship with Stephen turned violent, and domestic violence became a recurring issue. After an incident where the police were called, her son was placed in Child Protective Services. To regain custody of her son, Sam and Stephen got married. And I want to stop here and just say they only got married in hopes that they would get her son back. It wasn't because, I love you so much, let's be together forever. It was really one of, we need to get it together so we can get our son back. However, even though the domestic charges against Stephen were dropped, Samantha was informed at a court hearing that her son would remain in Child Protective Services. Devastated and disillusioned, Samantha broke ties with Stephen and filed for divorce in 2014. Samantha then met Rainey Stanley. She met him online as well, and Rainey offered her a stark contrast to all the previous relationships that she had been in. He provided stability with a steady job, appearing to be a good fit for Samantha. Early in their relationship, Samantha told Rainey about the possibility of her being pregnant, which was later confirmed. Rainey embraced the news, even though he knew that more than likely he wasn't the father. Her family hoped that Samantha had finally found her happily ever after. She remained hopeful that she would regain custody of her son and was determined to create the family she longed for. In March of 2015, she gave birth to another daughter and continued taking steps to build the family she desired.
Now, on April 10th, 2015 in Anderson, Indiana, a 911 dispatcher received a call from Rainey Stanley. He was 23 years old at the time, and he was reporting that his girlfriend, Samantha Fleming, had been missing for 4 days. I want to pause right here, Steph, because, do you think that is normal to call 911? Like, you're somebody that you are in a relationship with has been missing for 4 days. Is it normal, or would you call 911, or would you go to the police? Like, what, I mean, I guess technically they are the police, right? But I guess I think that's a little odd.
Oh yeah, for me, it's not odd. And I don't know if that's because I've heard so many crime cases. I think it's a person by person type of thing. I definitely would be going into the station, but I can see where a person may not know the proper protocol. And I don't think there is a proper protocol, but no, naturally, I think naturally most of us just think, oh, let me go in. But if you don't have that knowledge, I can see where it's like, okay, let me call 911, because that's what we're instructed to do when we're in elementary school.
That is from the beginnings.
Yep.
Well, Rainey emphasized to the 911 dispatcher that Samantha was still recovering from a recent C-section that she had undergone just 17 days prior. And he explained to her that he had initially called when she first went missing. So this was not his first call. He's like, I initially called when she first went missing, but I'm calling again because I haven't heard back from anybody. Like, no police has gotten in contact with me, and she's still missing. The 911 dispatcher sent officers to his apartment so that they could investigate the situation. And Rainey stated to the officers that he last saw Samantha on April 6th when an individual was claiming to be from the Department of Child Services. And they had arrived stating that Samantha had a hearing in Gary, Indiana, and Rainey was asked to come down to the station to provide a formal statement. So this is the last time that he's saying he saw her. Now, in his statement, Rainey claimed that Samantha disappeared on Monday at around 12:50 p.m. And he described that the person who came to the apartment was a heavyset African-American woman that was dressed in business attire and was carrying a binder. Now, the woman stated that Samantha had a hearing in Lake County and needed to bring the baby with her. And Rainey found it unusual for a caseworker to pick up a parent for court. Like, the woman was like, I'll take you down to the courthouse. So you bring your baby, let's go. But, despite the fact that he thought it was unusual, he didn't say anything at the time. Now, he also noticed that the license plates on the vehicle the caseworker was driving was expired when he helped load up the car seat for the baby and load up Samantha into the vehicle. And he found that extremely suspicious. And so as a result, and good job to Rainey, he rushed and was like, that seems odd. It also seems odd that a caseworker is showing up and taking somebody to court. So let me write down these license plate. Let me write down the license plate number. And so he did. Now, Rainey mentioned that he exchanged text messages with Samantha after she left, but that soon after the text messages stopped. So the police took the license plate number that Rainey was able to write down, and they ran it. And they discovered that the plates belonged to a vehicle located in southern Indiana, and that the vehicle was allegedly no longer in use. So after further investigation, it revealed that the people associated with the license plate, were not involved in Samantha's disappearance. So after they did a little bit more digging, because you're able to track from a license plate, when you register your vehicle and you get a license plate, it's registered to an owner, and they were able to track down that owner and find out that this person has no involvement. They're not in any way involved in this. And so to verify Rainey's story, the police canvassed the apartment complex, and they located a neighbor who also confirmed seeing this African-American woman who appeared initially lost. Like, I guess before she got to Samantha and Rainey's apartment, this neighbor spotted her and she appeared lost. And the neighbor stated that the woman asked if they could help, like if this neighbor could help her find Samantha Fleming. The neighbor was like, yeah, and they directed this woman to the right apartment. Now, the neighbor also overheard the conversation between this African-American woman and Rainey and Samantha, and heard that, there was some sort of case hearing that she needed to get to. These findings were able to corroborate Rainey's account of what happened, and it also ruled him out as a suspect in the disappearance of Samantha.
This episode is brought to you by Greenlight. Get this. Adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. From swimming lessons to piano classes, us parents invest in so many things to enrich our kids' lives. But are we investing in their future financial success? With Greenlight, you can teach your kids financial literacy skills like earning, saving, and investing. And this investment costs less than that after-school treat. Start prioritizing their financial education and future today with a risk-free trial at greenlight.com/Spotify. Greenlight.com/Spotify.
Subtle results, still you, but with fewer lines. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
We're going to shift gears, and I'm going to tell you about another woman. You see her on screen, and her name is Geraldine Jones. She was born in 1978 and raised in Gary, Indiana. As the youngest child in her family, she was considered spoiled and mischievous, with her sisters describing her as literally something else. I thought that was funny. Like, all of the information that I was taking in from one of her sisters was like, she was just something else. Like,
She
so
was
very
something else. But
she was just something else.
That is such a cultural thing to say. Like, I feel like I understand exactly what they're saying when they say she was just something else. Like, I get that, like, without further explanation.
Right. It's I mean, clock that to you. I'll get it, right? But coming from a family dedicated teachers, Geraldine aspired to follow in their footsteps, and she became a teacher herself. She successfully obtained her undergraduate degree from Purdue University and went on to teach for 8 years at a private school, eventually rising to the position of principal. She deeply loved children and devoted her life to nurturing them. At the age of 26, she began to desire a family of her own, leading her to leave her teaching career and become a deputy assessor. She just wanted to pivot, do a natural shift change, and maybe start a family. At the age of 35, Geraldine met Randy, a hardworking man who was deeply involved in his church. In October of 2014, Geraldine made a joyous announcement. She and Randy were expecting twins, both girls. Her sisters organized a baby shower to celebrate the impending arrival of her daughters. By the spring of 2015, Geraldine was eagerly counting down the days until she was due to give birth. However, after Geraldine announced her pregnancy, certain incidents began to raise questions and concerns among her family regarding the legitimacy of her pregnancy. Initially, the due date was set for December, but it was later changed to March. Randy, her boyfriend, grew increasingly troubled by her behavior, catching her in numerous lies. She would claim to have appointments, but refused to let him accompany her. Frustrated and fed up with her deceit, because this was over the course of time where he was just like, just let me come, let me see. And she never would. And so he eventually grew tired. Randy eventually broke up with Geraldine, leaving her sisters and family as her sole support system. When her scheduled delivery date arrived, her family was unable to locate her, despite checking all the hospitals in the area. Eventually, she contacted her family and claimed that one of her baby girls died during birth. However, she had the other surviving child at home. So they never saw her in the hospital at all. Just want to keep you guys up to date. Now, the family assumed that she was going through grief, obviously, if you just lost a child, and maybe she was experiencing also postpartum depression. Eventually, her sister went to check on her, finding her very depressed. Shifting back to Samantha, they were pursuing further leads. Investigators go to Samantha's mother's home, Sandy. There it was revealed that Samantha texted her mother and her sister, revealing she was on her way to court to go and get her son back. She had to put pen to paper, like this was the last step, and the custody agreement would be settled. Her sister said she would meet her at the courthouse, but when she arrived, there was no Samantha and no new baby that she just gave birth to. They kind of just figured, we're just going to wait to hear from her. And maybe I got my times mixed up. You rationalize things. Maybe I got my times mixed up. Maybe she was here and I missed her. And so they traded around for Samantha's text. An hour went by and Samantha did text. She claimed that the judge said that she was unfit and essentially it was bad news. She wasn't going to get her son back. Sandy expressed that the tone of the text was not her daughter and was very suspicious. I want to talk a little bit about tones of text messages because there is such a thing. MD, you can tell me your feedback, but if you text someone on a fairly regular basis, you know how they talk, you know how they type, you know the tone of the text. And so I think it's very important just as listeners to be in tune with those little oddities just in case something ever happens. What do you think about the tone of the text and how that can be important in cases, but just in everyday life as well?
Tone technically is auditory, so it's not necessarily tone. I think we all understand what it means. There is a certain way in which you as an individual text. There's a certain way that you speak. And what's interesting, sometimes the way that you text is not the way that you talk. Like you may text more slang or you may talk more in complete sentences. I mean, even little differences like if you have several thoughts, you're either this type of person that sends it all in one long text message, or you send it, in sentences. Like, here's one sentence, here's another sentence, here's another. There's even things down to you don't spell out the word because, you just put BC. And so little things like that, or, you never use emojis, or you always use emojis. I mean, there is certain ways in which we communicate via text message that is very unique. It's almost in some ways not as strong as this, but it's almost like a fingerprint, right? It's unique to who you are. And so when you regularly do text a person, you know when something's off.
Sandy, taken aback by the tone of the message, I'm going to call her Sam because her friends and family always call her Sam. So we'll use that interchangeably in this case. But she told Sam to call her. Sam refused. And 36 hours later, she completely stopped texting and answering texts and never answered anyone else's phone calls.
And I love how Sandy, Sam's mom, said, call me. She followed her gut in the sense that she was like, this doesn't sound right. This is not Sam. Just call me. I'm not going to text. This doesn't sound right. I'm just going to say, hey, call me. And Sandy told detectives that the caseworker associated with the case was new, as she was familiar with the intricacies of the case. So she knew enough to say, this is a new caseworker. And 2 days before Sam went missing, a woman named Angela Grossman claimed that she was the supervisor, and she claimed that she was trying to reach Samantha, but didn't have her number. Sandy gives the supervisor, Angela Grossman, Sam's number. And about 15 to 20 minutes later, Sam calls her mom and thanks her for being, the point of contact between Angela and herself. And her mom asked, is everything okay? And she gave detectives the name Angela Grossman, but she couldn't give them the number because the number that Angela Grossman called Sandy from was a blocked number. So it didn't pop up on her screen. Now, this wasn't unusual, this block number, because sometimes government agencies like caseworkers, they may block their number because they don't want you to have their personal information. I know, Steph, I'm thinking about when this isn't a government agency, but when I call my doctor's office and the nurse calls me back, oftentimes it is from an unknown number. It doesn't have the actual number because they are working from home, calling from their personal number, and they don't want you, parent who is scared that something may be going on with their child, blowing up their phone, right? So it isn't unusual that there could be this blocked number. They asked if there was anyone in Sam's life that would want vengeance against her. Stephen's name came up instantly because of their toxic relationship. They verified information from Sandy. They verified that Sam did not have a court date. This woman shows up and says, hey, you have this court date and you got to be there. But once investigators probed into that, and it's just an easy go down to the courthouse or call the courthouse and see who was on the docket, they see that Sam was not, in fact, on the docket. And they didn't have a caseworker on Sam's case file with the name of Angela Grossman that worked for DCS. They looked at the records for Sandy, and they had to subpoena her cell phone records so that they could see if they could obtain any number associated with this blocked number. When you subpoena cell phone records, it takes time. Now, in the meantime, they knew that they needed to talk to Stephen. So Sam had filed for divorce, but there was an error on the paperwork and he was never served. So technically, Stephen was still technically her husband. And they found Stephen in Gary, Indiana, where he resided, and he agreed to speak to them. But later, he ended up obtaining an attorney. Stephen did the right thing. He inevitably claimed that he didn't want to speak to law enforcement because they spooked him. Steph, what do you think? I think that's valid. I think that's a valid reason to not want to speak to the police.
I think it is a valid reason to not want to speak to the police. But I think in his case, he was spooked because he had a history with the police that wasn't favorable. I mean, we think about that domestic violence charge that he picked up when he was with Sam. I would be spooked too if I had some charges or I had been in some trouble from before. Makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, the investigators received a break in the case when Samantha's wallet was found at an apartment complex in Gary, Indiana, specifically the Woodlake Village area. Now, they found it in a dumpster and her ID was there, but nothing else of significance. They canvassed that apartment complex, but they didn't discover anything else. Now, around the same time, the block call finally came in, the subpoena for the records, all that information came in, and they were able to point that block number to the owner, Geraldine Jones, and she was not, in fact, employed by DCS.
By April 17th, Sam and her infant daughter had been missing for 11 days. Police were able to pinpoint that Geraldine was the woman, in fact, that Sam had left with. They head to Geraldine's home in Gary, and they hope to find Geraldine there, but she isn't home. But someone answers the door. It was her sister, Tamiko. Investigators immediately asked Tamiko, what's the name of your child, right? Thinking that obviously they went through the formality of asking her if she was Geraldine, right? But what's your baby's name? And Tamiko responded that she didn't know. Now, you hear me having a little laugh in my spirit over here because that sounds nuts, doesn't it? And it sounded ridiculous to investigators as well, because naturally, Geraldine was the last person who was seen with Sam. And now Geraldine's not there, but Tamiko's holding this baby and she doesn't know the name of the child. This is all pretty crazy. Investigators asked to come in, and Tamiko then told them that the baby belonged to Geraldine, her sister. But a week earlier, her sister left to go to Texas and left the baby behind. And initially, she didn't leave the baby with Tamiko. She actually left the baby with their father. But their father was somewhat elderly. And one day, Tamiko went by the house, found out that Geraldine decided to drop the baby off and go to Texas. And she decided to take care of the baby, which landed her at Geraldine's house on that particular day because she wanted to gather some belongings. And she had only been there about 30 minutes when the police arrived. As the detectives enter into the house and they're having this conversation with Tamiko, they notice an unusual odor. And we know what that odor is, right? Because decaying flesh has a certain odor. And he immediately requested that Tamiko step outside with the baby, and he went ahead and started to look around. And Tamiko told him that she also noticed the smell, but she kind of felt like, well, my sister hasn't been here for over a week. Maybe that is just the trash that needs to be taken out. And that may sound ridiculous to us, right? Because we're true crime sleuths. We know all about that smell. But that's really not unusual when you have no idea what decaying flesh smells like, other than it stinks, right?
If you don't, I have no idea what decaying flesh smells like. I mean, I know that it's strong, it's pungent based on all of the true crime stories that we've covered, but I've never smelt it. And I know that they say it's a very distinct smell, and once you smell it, you can't ever unsmell it. But if you've never smelled it, I think it's logical to think, well, I mean,
I don't know,
what
the
is it?
stinks?
You're trying, you don't, right? And I don't think that you naturally go to, unless you already are thinking your sister or somebody killed somebody, you don't naturally go to, that's a dead body. I think you naturally go to something's, maybe even a dead rat. Maybe there's a dead animal, but not a dead person.
Right. The detective knew that this was not normal. He starts to look around the house. He's in the bathroom first and then goes to the bedroom. And in the bedroom, he opens up the closet door and discovers toes and legs that are going upward along the wall. And he knew immediately that this was a crime scene. He called the crime scene forensic analysis to the scene, and they found a body that was wrapped in plastic with duct tape. And it also was placed in a plastic tote. They had no idea who was inside because investigators are working their way through the evidence. However, the detective had a very good hunch. He felt like the person dead in the closet was Samantha and believed that the baby that was left behind that Tomiko had in hand was Samantha's child. The baby was taken to the hospital just to get checked out, and the body was eventually transferred to the coroner's office. They believe that the killing occurred in the home, and they didn't find initially a lot of blood, but they found cleaning supplies all throughout the house. Outside of the home, they found a red sedan, 2007, and it was registered to Geraldine Jones, and the plate number was almost a match for what Rainey wrote down and gave to detectives. He had one number wrong. The coroner identified the body of Samantha Fleming. They identified her through tattoos. There were 50 plus stab wounds to the front of her chest and the back of her body. They did eventually identify the baby through a birthmark on her ear.
Investigators took Tomiko's statement and ruled out Stephen. Detectives went to Texas to arrest Geraldine and find out Geraldine attempted suicide at her mom's house in Texas. She took Tylenol PM. But she was alive and stable. She refused to speak and she asked for an attorney. She was transferred inevitably back to Indiana where she was charged and she maintained her silence. They were left to put the pieces of the puzzle together. What happened to Samantha and why did Geraldine do this? Well, in 2014, Geraldine went to the doctor and her urine test was positive and blood showed that it was negative. So if I'm going to stop here and kind of have you maybe explain that a little bit more, like how or why that could happen. She had a positive urine test for pregnancy, but her blood showed that she was negative for pregnancy.
Right. So there's such thing as the HCG hormone, which is found in your urine. You should take a pregnancy test early in the morning when your urine is most concentrated, because that's where you're going to get the most HCG in your urine. More than likely, she peed on a stick. Usually you go to the doctor and they give you a blood test and they also do a urine analysis as well. Well, there is such thing as a false pregnancy or a pregnancy that ends in miscarriage pretty early. And so she more than likely, because let me remind you, the investigators are piecing this together on their own. They don't know for sure. She could have most certainly peed on a stick. It said no, and she went to the doctor. You have what they call an early miscarriage. This could have been the case for Geraldine. We'll unpack why I probably think it isn't later on.
Well, when she went to the doctor and they took her blood, it was negative. That there she learned, or what investigators believe is that once she was at the doctor and found that it was negative, she learned at that moment that she would not be able to carry a child long term. After learning that she was not going to be able to carry a child long term, she continued to pretend that she was pregnant, as doubts even showed that maybe she wasn't. She decided to come up with a plan, right, to find a baby, because we know she's not pregnant, but she's pretending like she is. And so through social media, she selected Sam as a victim. And that's when she changed the date. Because remember, in the beginning, we talked about how at first she was saying that her due date was December. Steph told us that. And then she changed it and moved it to March. Well, that's because Sam was not due until March. And so she changed that date to correspond to Sam's delivery. And she also learned through social media that Sam wanted to regain custody of her son. And so she preyed on Sam's vulnerability and lured Sam and her baby to Sam's inevitable death at her home. Now, instead of Geraldine taking Sam to the courthouse, like she told Sam and Rainey that she was going to do, they believe that she took her home to Gary, and it was there that they believe she jumped Sam, and Sam never saw it coming. And in May 2018, Geraldine pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter. She received 30 years prison time and 10 years of probation when she does get out.
Geraldine had her own story. This is what she alleges happened on that particular day. She claimed that she faked her pregnancy because she didn't want family and friends to know that she couldn't have a child. She claimed to have went on a website where she posted an ad. If anyone felt like they couldn't care for their child, she told them to contact her and she would give them an offer. She claimed that Sam reached out to her personally when she was about 2 months pregnant, and she said she couldn't keep her baby and she would sell her child for $2,000. It was Sam's idea, according to Geraldine, to pose as a DCS worker, bring her back to the home later that day just to make it look legitimate to friends and family, so that she could eventually claim to friends and family that she went to this court date, she was charged as unfit, and the judge not only took her son away indefinitely, but also took her daughter that she just gave birth to away as well. This was the plan. But when they finally got back to Geraldine's home, she claimed that they got into an argument because Geraldine didn't have all of the $2,000. So they began to fight, and in an act of self-defense, she started to stab Samantha. And she did it all in self-defense. Now, detectives, nor does Sam's family believe this is the truth at all. As a matter of fact, they found no evidence to back up anything that Geraldine was saying. If you put an ad on a website, that footprint is there. Why can't we go and find it? There was no evidence to back it up. Even the stab wounds that were found on Sam, there were no defensive wounds found on her person at all. On to our takeaway, because there's so much to unpack here. Geraldine is an interesting person. This is not much a takeaway. This is my thoughts surrounding this case. She, amongst other people who lie about such big events like pregnancy, marriage, just these really core things that are like very important to people and affect others. And people like that scare me. If you can lie about something significant, I just know you're telling lies all the time. You're a habitual and pathological liar. I don't believe that Geraldine ever went to the doctor. I want to be clear. The reason that we gave to why she couldn't have kids, we didn't say anything about fibroids. There was something medical, because usually if you're just barren, there is a medical diagnosis to that. We didn't hear any of that during this case because these are all Geraldine's claims. I believe that she lied the entire way through. And to highlight Samantha, because I do want to highlight her and not spend so much time on Geraldine, even though she is diabolical. For me, Samantha was on path to getting her life together. And I by no means believe that Samantha would have sold her daughter for $2,000. She could have easily given her daughter to her mother, which is what she did the first time. I mean, when she realized, I can't take care of this baby, I need to hand it over to my mom so that it can be cared for properly. That was her character. That was who she was. And I think for Geraldine to perpetrate this lie that she was trying to sell her baby is a part of who Geraldine is at the end of the day.
Yes, Steph. I mean, Geraldine is crazy. And I think your description of her being diabolical is absolutely what she was. My question to you, this isn't my first time hearing this case. I could not recall, and I want to know if you knew in your research of this case, if Geraldine's, like, the baby daddy that she was claiming she was pregnant by, was he of mixed race? Was he different race than her? I asked this, or was Samantha's, was Rainey, what was he? Was he Black? I'm asking because what was the long-term plan here when the baby, if those answers were no, when this baby looks Mexican, what was your long-term plan here?
Okay, so to answer all of your questions, Sam was obviously white, and I believe that Steven was Black, but I don't know if that was Steven's baby. It was some overlap, so I really, truly don't know. I feel like I can't truly answer what her baby's ancestry was, but I don't think that Geraldine had a long-term plan because she made up her lies as she went along. I'm going to say that I'm pregnant. I can have this false baby bump for 9 months. All right, let me put an ad, or let me start stalking, because I don't believe she did an ad either. It was, let me start stalking Sam's social media. And that's exactly what she did. She started stalking her social media, which is why she knew about her son in custody and all of those things. Because naturally, people use, sometimes, whether you agree or disagree, they use Facebook and social media as a diary. I don't think Geraldine had a long-term plan. I think when she killed Sam, she did not think about the toll that death can have on you, taking someone's life. She didn't think about those things, which is why I say she's mentally ill. She lives in her head and carries out things that have no business taking place.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate.
Yes. That is our crime case for this week. We encourage you guys to definitely leave your comments about this case, whether you've heard it before or maybe you heard a new detail here. Let us know what you think. Do you think Geraldine is crazy? Yes or no? Because she most certainly deserves to be in jail. But share and care this episode with friends and family. And we will see you next week. This is Murder in the Black.